What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another week of the Accelerate Your Life podcast. Guys, last week I was down for the count bad, but we're back. We're back. We're fine. We're feeling great. And honestly, it gave me a good topic to do last week that I didn't have in my rotation, which is always helpful because honestly, coming up with podcast episode ideas, it's getting a little challenging. We're on like episode 60 something. It's getting a little challenging. So if you ever have any ideas, please let me know. But that sickness, we're going to see the glass half full. And it gave me a good podcast episode to do last week. So if you didn't listen to that one, we are definitely in sicky season. So that would be a great one to go back to now, just so you know what to do when the inevitable comes, or next time you do get sick, head back to it. I just talked about, my tips, tricks on what to do when it comes to your health and fitness. Especially your plan at place when you are sick and how to get back into the groove of things. Now, today, I really owe you guys a Fast Fit Facts episode, okay? It's been a while. I know I've been neglecting it, been sleeping on it, but I'm going to do one today. And I was thinking about what topic to do because I feel like I've knocked out a lot of the good ones, but I need to talk more about training on this podcast. I think that is somewhere where I fall short sometimes is talking about the training side, which is funny because like I love that side of stuff. I'm so passionate about it. I feel like maybe it's just because I've been doing it so long that I kind of just forget about it. Whereas nutrition, there's always new things being learned. It's always novel. I don't know. I definitely think, and I feel like people assume that their problem most of the time is nutrition. So that's what they ask about most of the time. So then I think that's what most people want to learn about. But you don't know what you don't know. And I do think for a lot of people, the training side actually is a huge missing piece or piece that we need to optimize, but they just don't realize that because I think it's easy to assume, well, if I'm working out, then I'm good there. And it's like, there's a little bit more to it. But anyway, with that being said, today's Fast Fit Facts episode is in a little bit more in regards to the training side. And we are going to be chatting about soreness. Does it define a good workout? Does it equal a good workout? Well, the podcast episode title name is Soreness Does Not Equal Progress. So that's a little bit of a spoiler of my take is that no, soreness does not equal progress. That is a fact. Well, the fact is that we can't say it does. Okay. It can sometimes, but we cannot definitively say that soreness is a good thing. And we cannot definitively say that we should chase soreness. And that's, I think, what I really want to come out of this episode for anybody listening is chasing soreness. Well, I don't know if you guys could hear that. Something just clanged bad outside my apartment. Anyway, chasing soreness is what we want to avoid. And I think when people are first getting into working out, of course, soreness is something that, typically comes up because it's something novel. But then it's easy, I think, for people to assume that soreness is a sign of I worked hard, right? I pushed myself. I must have progressed. I must have really done well. That workout was really good because I'm sore. And so they'll chase soreness, which can be really a negative thing. Or they'll feel like if they don't get sore, that workout was not beneficial, wasn't good enough, they didn't push themselves hard enough. And that is also not the case. So my biggest takeaway from this episode is I want you to understand that soreness is not the end all be all indicator of a good workout. It's something we can take into consideration. It's kind of like the scale when it comes to weight, right? Like it's a data point. It can definitely tell us something, but it does not tell the whole story. And we have to rely on, I think that there's better measures of progress, right? So that's what we're going to kind of get into here. So to start off, first of all, what is soreness? I think that's what we have to understand. Soreness, what we're referring to when our muscles are sore from movement, is what we call DOMS, DOMS, which stands for delayed onset muscle soreness. And this is different than obviously immediate muscle fatigue when you are working out and you go to failure and you can no longer push a rep because you are having immediate muscle fatigue. DOMS is what happens after the fact, right? Like you obviously typically notice that you get sore probably 24 hours after, 36 hours after. That's the delayed onset, right? Muscle soreness. And what's causing this on an actual physiological inside your body level? Honestly, a lot of studies, they don't know exactly for sure, but we know it's a combination of lactic acid buildup and inflammation that is coming to help the muscles repair. And that's it's not a bad thing. We do want that inflammation. However, think about this, and this is kind of what's leading to the point of that sometimes soreness is not a good indicator and sometimes we can overdo it and soreness can be a bad thing, right? Is that excessive soreness? If we have excessive soreness, which put a pin in that because we'll get to what excessive soreness means later in this episode. But excessive soreness is a sign that we have excessive inflammation. And excessive inflammation is only occurring if there is excessive damage, right? Inflammation comes to help something repair. And again, I'm using the word excessive because actually we do want a little bit of muscle damage when we are lifting, which again, put a pin in that. I'll get to in a second. But there's a fine line, right? We don't want to have excessive damage and over tearing of our muscles. That's leading to excessive inflammation. That's leading to excessive soreness, right? So if we're experiencing excessive soreness, it's typically a sign that like something is wrong. But I think understanding more so where soreness comes from is what can help you see why it's also not necessarily a sign, like a good, reliant, consistent sign of whether or not your workouts is good. So there's, I'd say, four things that soreness can come from. The first is micro tears in your muscle. This is the only like thing that soreness comes from that is a positive. And this is where I just said put a pin in like damage, and damage being potentially good for muscles. So when you are training, you are actually creating little micro tears in your muscles. And again, this is a good thing. This isn't a bad, I know it's like tearing my muscle, that sounds bad. No, little micro tears, this is a good thing because the way that muscle is built and becomes bigger and we become stronger is that those tears, when they heal, they are fusing back together and it's creating like, it's that's where the adaptation comes into play, and muscle it gets a little bit bigger when it fuses back together, right? And those tears are healed. But in order for those tears to heal, we have to have inflammation. And then again, that goes back to like excessive inflammation means excessive tears beyond the normal micro tears that we want. And that's where we know we've overdone it. But that general like adequate soreness coming from small micro tears from training, this is a sign of muscle growth. This is a sign of a good workout. This is good, right? So that's a place where soreness can be a good indicator. However, there's many other things soreness can come from, and it's very hard to know the difference. So again, that's why you cannot rely on soreness as the number one, oh, that was a good or good not workout. Because the next thing to think about, and this, I remember when this picture was painted for me, I think somebody talked, like it was on a podcast, and I'm going to use one of the examples they used, but I was like, that it clicked so much. But soreness also comes from a new range of motion or a new movement pattern. Let's just start with talking about like a new lifting routine, right? Let's say you're crushing it, you're practicing progressive overload, you're following a routine for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe, and then you switch routines. You are more than likely going to feel soreness after that first week of a new routine every single time you switch it, even if you were to use like body weight. And that's because you have new movements, new range of motions. Let's say you were doing, squats, barbell squats in your first routine, and then now you switch to split squats. You haven't done split squats in weeks, months. That's a complete new range of motion that your muscle, you're just a new movement pattern that your muscles are not used to, and it's likely going to be sore just because it's novel. But that doesn't mean that it actually had the load and progress that is needed to encourage adaptation, if that makes sense. Because it like your body adaptation and muscle growth and progress comes from progressive overload. If you guys know what we've talked about that before, right? But it comes from sending the single signal repeatedly that we need the body to be able to adapt to that. We're placing demand on the body and doing a movement for the first time. The body's like, cool. I mean, this is new, but you're not like, I don't have any signs yet that I need to like actually grow this muscle to get good at this. Like you've only done it once. For all I know, we're never going to do split squats again, right? But it still gets sore because split squats, it just was a new movement pattern that it has to get used to, but it's not necessarily producing adaptation. I hope that makes sense. But I think when you think about it on that level, we have to be giving the body a reason to actually grow and make progress. And that reason comes from repeatedly telling it needs to get better, but you don't have to have that repetition to get sore. So that's why soreness does not necessarily equate to progress. Okay. And on kind of that same note, but the flip side, and putting a vote in the court for why only having muscle soreness or absence of muscle soreness people think is like, oh, it doesn't mean didn't work hard enough. Here's a vote against that. Wow, I feel like I literally did not spew English trying to get to that point, but hopefully that made sense. You may start to see less soreness weeks into your training split, right? Because these movements are no longer novel to you. Your body is used to this movement pattern. You've now been doing split squats for 3 weeks in a row. So maybe you're not getting as sore, but you're able to load and use a little bit more weight because you're getting stronger at it, right? And your body's actually now used to the movement pattern. So you can load it a little bit more. The progress and the muscle growth is going to come from that load and that repetition. However, the soreness a lot of times comes from the new movement pattern, which it's not new anymore. So you may find yourself not getting sore the further you get into a training split, but as long as you are progressing and applying progressive overload, we know that that is what contributes to growth, right? And progress. So it's even a showing of like why like you may get growth and progress when you have no muscle soreness, okay? So that right there, big indicator I think of like why even in just strength training, soreness isn't necessarily a good indicator of whether or not something was a good workout. But this is the one that really clicked for me is like, think about even a movement that's, or an exercise, or not even exercise, but like activity that puts your body in a new range of motion or new movement pattern that is not used to. Take riding a horse. Okay. I know I've done this for the first time in years, and I was so sore. Did riding a horse tell my body to build muscle? No. There is no resistance applied. There's no load applied. I'm not moving through reps. But dang, my legs are definitely sitting in a position they've never been in and are like having to, yes, I mean, squeeze my quads maybe in a way that I haven't, but that's not necessarily putting the demand of muscle growth on my body, right? Or swimming. Okay, swimming. Like if I were to go swim tomorrow, I would definitely be hella sore because moving my arms overhead in that pattern is not a range of motion that I'm used to moving my rotator cuff in, right? So I bet my shoulders and my rotator cuff and my lats would be sore. And yes, they were engaged for sure, but there's not a lot of like resistance or continuous progression applied to it that's telling and placing a demand of build muscle on it. So yes, I would be sore from it, but it wasn't a muscle building signal creating that soreness. So that was the example that really clicked for me where I was like, oh, okay, like soreness does not necessarily equate to muscle growth. So all of that to say, new range of motion, new movement pattern, that's something that can play into soreness that isn't necessarily a sign of progress, okay? Another thing that can create soreness is excessive intensity, of course, and we kind of already touched on this, but more on this in a second. And this is where we want to be careful because too much is bad. And so I don't want people chasing soreness when in order to get that soreness, you might actually be doing too much. And then of course, bad form is another thing that can lead to soreness. So it's, you can think you're doing amazing because you're like, I'm sore after this workout. I must have crushed it. But really, it's just your form is horrible. And if we keep going that way, you're going to hurt yourself. So I think, again, just being like, great, I was sore, thumbs up. Am I sore or not? Like, if I am, thumbs up, crush that workout, must be progressing. Or if I'm not sore, okay, that wasn't good enough. I must push harder. Like, it's just not an accurate way to measure your progress in your workouts. And one other asterisk I do want to put in here is that there's also a genetic variance to DOMs. Okay. So some people just are genetically predisposed to getting more or less sore when they work out and recovering more or less quickly. So just another reason why you really can't use it because you may be somebody who just like truly it takes a lot for you to get sore, but that does not mean you're not progressing or vice versa. You might be somebody who literally like goes and walks longer than you usually do in your store. And again, that doesn't mean that like that walk was the most like progressive thing you could have ever done, right? Now I put a pin in the exercise intensity because I wanted to come back to this because I know questions people are probably asking is like, okay, well, dang, maybe I shouldn't be chasing soreness and maybe I'm like, I am always sore. Maybe I'm doing too much. How do I know? Okay. Soreness should not put you out for days. I would say like 72 hours of soreness is the absolute like you definitely did way too much and you definitely overtrained. And like I'm gonna give you two different reasons of why you kind of should believe me on this and take this seriously. And one is an actual like life-threatening reason. There is a condition called, I don't know exactly how to say it, but it's known as rhabdo, but the longer name is rhabdomyolysis, I think. And I've actually known two people in my life that have gotten this. So it's real. I mean, it's relatively rare, but like obviously being in the more fitness world and knowing a lot more people than maybe the general person does who, is obviously very into fitness and training a lot, like I probably am more predisposed to potentially knowing people that have gotten this, but I have known too. And essentially what happens in this disease is that there's excessive amount of muscle tissue breaking down. And when muscle tissue is broken down, there are electrolytes and proteins that are released into the bloodstream, which in normal amounts is fine. But when it is excessive, these amounts do become toxic, and this disease can lead to death. Luckily, both people that I know are fine, but they were both hospitalized and it was very, very serious. So don't want to overtrain there. But then my second little reason to convince you is if your concern is making progress, getting the gains, getting more toned, getting stronger, whatever, excessive soreness, excessive overtraining, it puts you backwards on that. It does not actually help with gains. And a big reason is number one, if it's putting you out for the count, well, now you're missing workout days. If you literally are so sore that you can't train for another 3 days, you're leaving. You're worse off absolutely destroying yourself in one hardcore workout and then not being able to work out for 3 to 4 days than you would be if you went a little bit lighter, but were able to work out 3 days in a row. And so that's a big thing, is it's like putting you out from the count. But then also even just the fact of when you are down for the count and having to sit still, lay still, not moving. This is the worst thing you can do for muscle building and just muscle maintenance. When you don't utilize a muscle for, I think it's around 72 hours, catabolism can start, especially if you're not, there's factors that can influence that, like eating a high protein diet can like help extend that, etc. But not utilizing a muscle because you're so sore that you're just like sitting on the couch, it's one of the worst things you can do. So I'd so much rather see you go lighter and not have soreness and be able to continuously add volume, load, and intensity in your training sessions. Okay. So I hope that made quite the point of why soreness does not equal progress. Now, I'm not saying that soreness is bad. Okay. Soreness can be a sign of progress. Like the first thing I named for soreness, or the first thing I said at the beginning of this episode, is that one of the reasons for soreness is those micro tears, which is what we want. So it can be a sign of progress, but it does not definitively equal progress. And that's the biggest thing that I want to get across, is it's just not an accurate across the board measure of if a workout is good or not. Okay. So what is a better measure then? If soreness is not, like, soreness can be present, cool. Soreness cannot be present, cool. It could still be a good workout. So how do you know? The thing that equals progress is progress. Okay. You will know you are progressing and getting stronger and promoting muscle growth in your body if you are able to progress workout over workout. And so what I'm referring to is progressive overload. And I did reference that a couple times in this episode. And if you guys have been listening to the pod, you should know what that is. We've done episodes on it. But if maybe this is the first episode you're listening to, go back. There's definitely a Fast Fit Facts episode on progressive overload. But it is just that idea of being able to get stronger week over week, following the same, lifting routine, and week over week, being able to add a couple pounds or add a couple reps, or even sometimes it's switching up your routine, but like getting, stronger in other, it's just like similar movement patterns, but getting stronger in other ways. But if you are able to progress in those things, then you are placing that repetitive demand on your body, telling it to adapt and get stronger. And that's what we know guarantees progress. Okay. So I'd much rather you look at that and are you doing that in a workout versus are you getting sore or not? So that wraps up this week's episode of Fast Fit Facts, FFF. Soreness does not necessarily equal progress. It can. Okay. All squares, I always say this wrong. All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. It's kind of like that. All soreness, hold on, let me think how to say this. Soreness can equal progress, but not all soreness equals progress. Okay. I think that's it. That wraps it up. So anyway, thank you guys for joining this week. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I have actually never asked for this, I don't think. I would love if you could leave a review. I think we have a few reviews, which means the world. Also, you guys were posting Spotify Wrapped. There was like 6 people who posted Spotify Wrapped, and I was in their podcast, and I just can't even tell you how much that means. So thank you for being here. Would love for you to leave a 5-star review, comments, whatever. Share this podcast on your Instagram story. I started this podcast. I did not plan to say all of this, but I'm kind of going on tangent. I started this podcast just to help give more free information. Obviously, I have my one-to-one coaching, but I like connecting with y'all. I like giving more information and being able to, yeah, just help more people. But this also has somewhat become a little bit of a opportunity for us to find more clients, bring in more leads that do want to be clients of EA. And we're just a little small business. I started this, never having any plans for it to be what it is now, but now it does employ, 14 other people, five of them who it's their full-time job. And I just want to be able to keep this going, help them, help others. So anything that you guys do share of this on your social media seriously like means the world and does help us in more ways than you know. So would appreciate that. And if you are interested in applying for one-to-one coaching, link is in the show notes. And I think that is all I have for you guys today. Okay, love you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.